All right. So today on the Wayne Carlen Show, we want to share our erase story. So what's an erase story, you ask? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on the Wayne Carlen Show. Everybody, and welcome to the Wayne Carlen Show. I'm Wayne.
And I'm Carlen.
And we're here today to let you know that while we're erasing race, the country has exploded, man, on the subject of race. I mean, every day you wake up, in the morning you wake up, there's race on the television, there's race on the internet, there's race on the radio. Everywhere you log in, there's race front and center. It just appears that this is the age of race.
Yeah. Hey, and while it is the age of race, and some would say, of course, racism, they call it racism, but here at Erase Race, we think that this was necessary just so race would become a big issue so that we could come swooping in as Erase Race and say, hey, we've got the solution to the problem. And that's what we think. And we can then push for the erasing of race, or as I like to call it, something harder, the eradication of it. So today we want to broadcast the launch of our Erase Story page on our website at eraseraces.com. You can go out there and you can give us your erase story. And what is an erase story? Well, let me go into a little more detail and tell you about it. All right, so as I travel the country, I often, because of course I had my decked out van with erase race graphics and all of that, I'd run into people sometimes waiting at my vehicle who wanted to share with me what they thought it meant to erase race. And as I listened to them around the country, I listened to so many people over the last few weeks, in addition to months ago, then I began to realize everybody's got a story. Everybody, because this thing that we created called race has so affected all of the citizens of America that everybody's got a story of an experience that they've had. And so what we want to do is give people an opportunity to have their voices heard, to air out their erased story. And so that's kind of what we're going to do on our show today. We're going to talk about Wayne and I, because everybody's kind of got an erased story. And that's one of the things that makes this so great. It doesn't matter what color you are. Everybody's got an erased story. Everybody's got a story about the first time that they encountered this issue of race personally. And that can come in a lot of different ways. And so we're going to have an opportunity for you to do that out on our website. But we're going to do that for you today just so that you can understand and so that we can actually bare our souls about how race has affected our lives. And so that's what we've got going on today.
So on today's show, the Wayne and Carlen Show, we're going to take you through our own personal, like Carlen was saying, real life experiences that had happened to us, our erase stories, and then we're going to ask you to submit your erase story to our website at eraseraces@gmail.com. We want you to send them in. We want to hear from you. And then each week we will select a story to broadcast on our Wayne Carlen Show. And if we use your story, we will then send you a Erase Race t-shirt so you can continue to spread the message that we are all one human race. And that's really what we're pushing, one human race.
We had a lot of response. I had the Erase Race mask, and a lot of people were saying, do you all have those for sale? And we don't have those for sale yet, but we're trying to work on that because a lot of people wanted the Erase Race mask. And so, but we will send out that t-shirt if we use your story. And it's quite likely that we're going to use some stories because I think there are a lot of great erase stories out there. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about the trip that I took to Atlanta this past week to participate in the One Race March on Atlanta, held by One Race Atlanta was the organization. It was pretty interesting to be part of that 7,000 strong crowd as they marched from the Centennial Park down to the Capitol there in Atlanta. And just a lot of different types of people, a great show of unity, but it was definitely not necessarily united in purpose and aim. So you've got a kind of a mixed multitude of people there marching, and they all kind of have different things. While some were saying no justice, no peace, some were saying no Jesus, no peace, and they weren't the same groups. You could kind of tell because some people had profanity laced chants, and the other people had very scripturally based chants, but yet they were all there marching in the same direction. So I think that's kind of indicative of what's happening in our country, and that we have a lot of people who might show up together, but in heart and mind, they might not be together. And so we're kind of the opposite of that. If we race, we don't care about all those other differences, but in heart and mind, we really want to be together, united together. And so that was kind of the experience in Atlanta. There's a lot more, and it was interesting while I was there in Atlanta. We went by the Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks, of course, was killed, and we met a contingent of Black Lives Matter there and had some discussion with them. And so that was pretty interesting to observe. And it was interesting to see if the city, because no policemen were in the area, and I don't think they would come by because that area was strictly, and when I say strictly enforced, they had control of that area. The people that were running it had weapons on them, and they were really daring pretty much any authority figures to come into the area. So that's an interesting dynamic that's kind of happening across the country in a lot of different ways. And so it would be interesting to see how that plays out in the end. Okay, so let's get to our erase stories. That's kind of a background for what we're going to do today. So we're going to start out, and Wayne's going to give us one of his erase stories. I don't know how many stories Wayne has. He's out in California, and they've been liberal a long time. So,
Yeah, right.
you know, hey, but they birthed the Black Panthers or whatever. So he's going to share his erase story, and after that, I'll bring an erase story, and that'll be our show for today. All right, so Wayne, take it away.
All right, yeah. You know, growing up in San Francisco, probably one of the most liberal cities in the country, you would think that there wouldn't ever be a story where it had to do with some kind of racial tension. And I can definitely give you a couple, but I'm not going to talk about those today because unfortunately those never did get to be erased involving the other people. The one I'm going to share today did. When I was 16, I moved to Arkansas. So leaving San Francisco, major city, obviously, I moved to Arkansas with my father, 16-year-old young man, athlete, played sports, basketball, baseball, all that. One of the reasons I went down there is I had visited him in the summer, and some of the guys down there were like, man, you should come down here and play. And so I did. And went down there, joined the team, became one of the stars on the team. And so down there, instead of like when I grew up in the city, we played against other city schools. So we only traveled around the city pretty much. Down there, you travel to different towns. I'm sure you're familiar with that growing up in Texas. Well, there was this one particular town, and it was called Grubbs. I'll never forget it. Because it was definitely a time in my life where my response to what was happening to us was anger. I would even go so far as to say hatred, wanting revenge. We played basketball in this one little town, and you know, game was going well. But then all of a sudden, these guys on the team, they started. You know, I think what their intention was to get me and a couple other guys kicked out of the game, and so they became very vicious, doing things, you know, calling us the N-word. And we were pretty much an all-black team. They were all white team. Calling us the N-word, calling my mother out of her name. I mean, just all kind of stuff. And you know, of course, that resulted in fighting and fouls and technical fouls and all that. When the game was over, we had to be escorted out of the gym because the people in the stands, I presume their parents and fans and everything, started throwing stuff at us. I mean, they were throwing everything at us. I remember pickles and apples and garbage, all kind of stuff being thrown at us. And now coming from San Francisco, I never experienced that type of intensity. I had my own personal issues, but that one was very intense. And so the next a month or two went by. Our whole time, the team was thinking, we're going to get these guys back. We're going to get them back because they really hurt us. And so they came to our gym. We blew them out, of course, in the game. And one of my best friends, he actually he was dribbling the ball up court, and one of the guys tried to set a screen in front of him, and he very slightly moved to his left and just got him in the groin with an elbow or a shoulder bump and knocked the guy out. They had to carry him out on the stretcher. Well, we were satisfied. We had got our revenge and all that, but that lingered with me for years. I could never let it go. This town was known. It was considered, you don't go through there. You definitely don't go through there at night. And so we didn't. We never ventured in that town. But in my years, when I left Arkansas 3 years later, I always had this in the back of my mind, what those people had did to us and how they had treated us, how they had dehumanized us. And so I went back last year in 2019 in January, and I visited my old town, hooked up with my good friend. We decided to go to a basketball game at our old high school, and so we're sitting up in the stands, and then it walks this guy, it's a white guy, and my friend says, "Hey, that's so and so, I don't know his name, from Grubs." "What do you mean from Grubs?" And immediately my stress level goes up because even though years have passed and I've never seen any one of those guys ever again, I immediately reverted back to what had happened to us. And he comes up and he speaks to him and he introduces me to him. And I'm shaking his hand, but I'm really still kind of like, I still remember back in 1977 what happened to us. Well, what had happened over the years is those two guys started working together on the same job, and they built a relationship with each other. They got to know each other. They actually, in Arkansas, became friends. And so they are laughing and joking, and I'm looking at him like, man, why are you even talking to this guy? In my mind, because I'm still thinking 1977. And so he sat down with us, and we started having a conversation, and really we started laughing about back then what had happened. It still wasn't funny, but it was kind of funny. He even laughed at the guy and by the way, the guy who was introducing us, my friend, he's the same one that knocked their guy out with an elbow strike. And so he's laughing about it and making fun about it. And he actually told me what that guy is doing now. In fact, a lot of them have changed their ways, is what he was telling me. And so the issue there was I had been carrying around this pain for years and years and years, and never was able to address it, never intended to address it. Just me personally with God, I addressed it, but I never been able to address it with any of the people involved. And all of a sudden here, and I was the one who insisted that we go to that game that night. My buddy didn't even want to go. I wanted to go because I hadn't been there since I graduated in 1978. And look what God did. He set up that situation where I was actually able to meet this guy who I had been harboring all of this resentment towards all of these years. Didn't even know him personally, never knew his name, didn't know any of them personally, didn't want to. But now I got to see that, through relationship, through them initially, things would be able to change. And then he was able to introduce me into that. Now, we haven't contacted since, and I probably won't, but at least I know that, there is redemption. If people decide to build a relationship and not continue to dwell in the past, you can move forward. So that's my erase story, because it really did change me, and it helped to move forward.
And I think you make the point that we harbor these things and we carry these things. And I think sometimes because of our history, we have done that generationally. And it's almost like my parents passed on their anger and their bitterness from their parents, and we've done this generationally. And that's why when people say, well, we've been doing it for 400 years, we've been passing that pain on for 400 years, when in fact, some of those people are, like you say, they've been redeemed and they've changed their views of life and everything. But we remember those who didn't. And then we confirm that those people still exist, because when the news shows us one of these, confirms what I've always known. That was true 50 years ago, and it's true today, because nobody broadcasts news about the great relationships that happen across cultures and things like that. That's not newsworthy. Right. Except I guess maybe now in this context, maybe they would get some attention. All right, well, hey, but that's a great story. We definitely down in Texas, we got a lot of situations like that where you went into places that you shouldn't have been. And so we had some of those when I was playing high school football. And the amazing thing is, whenever we would take a trip like that, because I went to an integrated school, and then we would go to this other county or this little town where that was not integrated, the stories were always so more ominous than what actually took place. I mean, we'd go there and, well, we played the game and came back and nothing happened. But the stories that we heard, and people said, wow, y'all went to Woodville. Wow, y'all went to Splendora. And we were like, well, yeah, we heard a lot of stories. And so we went there looking for it, Are they going to call me the N-word? Are they going to do this or whatever? Never materialized. And so I guess we were disappointed. So, but that's kind of what happens. But I got my erase story, and I got a million of them. Never know which one I want to tell, because I've got lots of erase stories. Because the key of my erase story is that I wouldn't say they all have good endings. They always have great educational endings. There's more enlightenment to what happened there, because even sometimes when people do bad things, you're more enlightened about where they're coming from, and you understand why they have the hatred and whatever, and you're able to put that in a proper context. And I think that's important for us. But in my erase story happens actually in our family, right in my own, within the confines of my home. And I remember my mom was a school teacher, and she began teaching in the school district where we lived at when I was, it had to be, I was probably in second, third grade, very early in my life. So maybe fourth or fifth grade, but my older sisters were in junior high, I think. And my sisters were very radical. Especially my oldest sister, of course, my brother, he was probably like Wayne, or one of those Black Panther types, whatever. And so we were in an integrated school. And so you can imagine in the early 70s that there was a lot of frustration over race, because we had forced busing and these things were taking place. And my oldest sister, I remember her getting in trouble at school because she used a racial epithet to describe one of her teachers. And she told the teacher to the face, and I don't think anybody understands this outside of Texas, in 1970 probably, that she called the teacher a white patty. And a white patty was a derogative term, a racial epithet, and she got in trouble for that. And boy, when she got home, my mom just tore her up. She tore her up for doing that. And to me, as a young kid, because my sister's years older than me, so I was probably like five years older, and I'm a little kid, I'm going, wow. To me, that said, mom will not tolerate you demeaning anyone because of their skin color. That was the message that I got in my house, that my mom would not tolerate that, would not allow that to happen. Because at the same time, we lived in Prairie View, which was quote unquote a Black town, and we got bused to the white town. And so there was always still this frustration, between the cities and the people. But to see my mom do that, because you would think most people would have said, well, they should get that because that's the way they are, because the way they are, we should be able to talk to them that way. Mom wasn't having it. Mom was not having it. I don't care what they've done to you. I don't care what she said to you. You will not do likewise to them. That was a huge message to me, that you don't respond to fire with fire. You don't respond to hate with hate. And so I think that stuck with me all these years. And so that really became a part of my life. And I went through, and I never did understand people who responded to hate with hate, whatever, because that was always a big part of my thought process, that to respond differently than the people, don't be like the people that you hate, because you should be different than those people. So that's my race story right there in our own home. And it was a good one.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. I know we could probably do this all day. Like you said, you have millions of them. I have a lot more as well. But what we're going to do, we're going to keep on moving on this edition of Wayne Carlen Show. But remember, we still have T-shirts and merchandise at our store at the Erase Race website. Carlen, just close us out with our volunteer pitch. We need to
yeah, we really, hey, it's that time. Now, here's the thing. We've got a $1 campaign. So there's no excuse for you not to donate to Erase Race, because you could always give $1. All right. You can give $1 one time, you give $1 once a month, or if God really has enabled you to support, because I tell you what, what I talked about is happening in Atlanta. There's going to be a big division between those people who are trying to solve the problem of race in our country. You're going to have the people such as myself and Erase Races, Wayne and my crew, and we're going about it unifying. We're trying to bring people together and saying, let's solve the problem together. And on the other side of that, you're going to have people who are saying they're the problem. Let's place the blame on them, and let's try to exact as much blood from them as we can so that they feel the pain that we're experiencing. Those are two different viewpoints. And so we're going out there and we're grabbing as many people as we can. That's why we say, go buy a T-shirt, go do this, go that, because we want to build that grassroots effort where everybody belongs. And that's our philosophy. We're not just saying all lives matter, trying to rival Black Lives Matter. It's just our concept that all people need to be a part of what we're doing, because we're talking about unity. So that's what we're trying to do. So support us, go out to our website and you can donate, you can buy T-shirts. And more than that, we really want your erased story, because we have forums where people begin to tell us their personal vignettes about life. That's where we're really going to make the change, because ultimately in the long term, there will be no legislation. There'll be none of these quick initiatives that everybody's coming up with. It's going to be you and me deciding to meet people that are not like us, engaging them and building relationships. That is the answer for race. So regardless of if people hate sometimes that I say erase race, because no, we'll always have race. We'll always have that if you decide you don't want to engage in relationships. We don't need race if we know people. Race is used so we can stereotype and get an idea about who they are without actually knowing them. But if we invest our lives in knowing people not like us, then we will automatically have erased race or done away with that concept. It's almost like in America, we get a do-over. We can go back to 1619 and say, let's start again. And that starts with you. If you decide to do it, it starts with you. So that's it. And hey, we thank you for being a part of the Wayne Carlen Show today. And I want to thank my co-host Wayne. And we'll till next time, we'll say we're out of here.
We out.
All right, I stopped the stream. I didn't try to do the music thing again because I didn't practice that enough. That's why it took so long for that thing to play.
Yeah, I was like, what
I was like, man, I needed to practice that because there's so many different screens. You got to click this and click that. And that was a big, long pause. And I don't think, I might have forgotten even to click the music, the sound through the computer. Was the quality okay? See, I think I did. I think it came through my mic rather than through the system because I forgot to click that because I was going through too many. So we got to remember, we got to